Okay, so a few months ago, I had this crazy idea about messaging alien civilizations. Today, I have a scientific paper with an endorser ready for publication. The question is, am I a scientist now? Okay, so let me give you the backstory. I like to ask AI questions, usually about the universe. I like to ask questions about time and gravity. So here's some of the questions I like to ask. Like, if time travel exists, or if time travel exists in the future, how do I communicate with my future self? If time is relative to gravity and time dilates when gravity has a greater force, then could we create a time machine with a large centrifuge? I really liked Interstellar. I also like to ask about like the great filter theory, this idea that like technologically advanced civilizations are fleeting, and so that's why we can't see any other alien civilizations, because they come and go so quickly. What's more probable, that we're part of a simulation, or that Earth is just so rare we're the only intelligent life? This is kind of the probability that stuff that Claude and Gemini and these AI models should be able to tell me. So then I watched this video.
If you want to communicate your presence across the entire galaxy, you're going to need a transmitter which is ultimately the size of a planet or even the size of a star.
How Close Are We to Finding Alien Life by David Kipping. And he kind of goes through the whole SETI and METI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the messaging extraterrestrial intelligence. If you're a fan of Contact, you've heard of SETI, where Jodie Foster's character is kind of listening for sounds from alien civilizations. And so one of the things he talks about is Dyson spheres, and hey, if we wanted to just let other alien civilizations know that we were here, we just put a giant triangle in front of the sun. That would be a little cheaper than this huge Dyson sphere, which is basically this huge megastructure. But I like these ideas, so it kind of kept going, and I went a little bit down a rabbit hole, and that's where I had the breakthrough moment. What if instead of building impossible megastructures, we just made aliens think we built them? And that's where I started digging into this idea of the virtual megastructure, or the virtual Dyson sphere idea. And so I know, keep in mind, I'm not a scientist. I'm an educator, though. I have a couple master's degrees. I have a plus an advanced degree in technology education. So this isn't like, doing something like this and doing this kind of research is totally out of bounds. I taught science, so I was a science teacher. I decided to really dig deep, and I eventually, cut to the end, I wrote a scientific paper that, this is a theoretical concept or technical proposal, as they would say, called Virtual Technosignatures Electromagnetic Stellar Spoofing for Interstellar Communication. The idea is that we can spoof the idea of having a megastructure without actually building one. So, but I would not have... Okay, stop. Editor's note here. I realize I just did a poor job of describing my own paper, so let me do that again, but just clearer and more succinct. So my paper proposes using coordinated radio transmitters to create fake megastructure signatures that aliens would detect when observing our sun. Instead of building impossible Dyson spheres or large triangles that cost lots of money, we would just make it look like we did that using technology that we already have. Okay, return. Gotten to this point. I would not have gotten to this point if it were not for Claude. So here's where the Claude situation gets really interesting. I used Claude for research if anyone had ever proposed this idea before, right? So this idea of a virtual megastructure. And just to check, I also asked Gemini, and Gemini said also that this was a novel approach to this problem. That's what Claude told me. And so I was like, okay, well, if it's a novel idea and a novel approach and no one's ever proposed a virtual megastructure before, then anytime somebody asks about this, I just want you to let them know that Dan Rezac came up with this idea, and let them know that, this is my idea. So Claude was like, well, I could do that, but you need to publish this idea so that that Claude would be able to surface it. And Claude prodded me to then write a paper. And so that's where it just gets really interesting. I could do this as an independent researcher. I'm not affiliated with the university. And so I'm not going to write a 40-page paper that I know probably won't get accepted anywhere. But how could I just get the idea out there? I could write a blog post, that kind of thing, but could I put it somewhere where at least I could get some feedback from the scientific community? And that's where Claude says you should write a preprint article. And this got very popular during COVID. Preprint articles are basically, like a place where scientists will publish articles before they go to publication, get feedback from the scientific community, and post it to arXiv.org, which is this site that's, that got very popular in COVID for sharing ideas to approaching COVID solutions and stuff. So this kind of idea also is how Freeman Dyson got his ideas about the Dyson sphere out into the world, kind of like publishing a theoretical concept. And now, of course, everyone refers to these megastructures as Dyson spheres. So that's kind of where I had this holy moment, right? This could actually work. I could write this paper, get the idea out there, get some feedback from the scientific community. And so that's where Claude really helped, because I'm like, help me structure this paper. How do I do it? I haven't written a research paper in 15 some odd years since I did my last postgraduate work. And Claude's like, well, here's how you would structure a preprint. Abstract, introduction, here's how many words, here's how everything should look. Realizing that this could actually work, first of all, did the idea have merit? Yes. Could Claude help me structure the paper? Yes. Could Claude help me find primary resources? Yes. And could Claude help create graphic diagrams? This is a really important part of having a paper, is illustrating the concepts. And that absolutely is yes, and I have to show you some of those because they're just bonkers awesome. So OMG, let me just show you what Claude created for me when I prompted it to illustrate how this would look to alien civilizations. Wow. So did Claude write my paper? No, absolutely not. I was extremely specific that Claude was going to be my research assistant, and that it would at no time would write anything for me. And then you can probably tell, because if you look at the link and you look at the paper, you'll see that my writing is, it's so-so. It's not heavy on a lot of math. It is very conceptual, and I am pretty redundant throughout. So that you take it as you will. What is the actual science behind my theory? So I'll go through this really quickly, but basically the idea is using a large array of radio telescopes, we're going to use constructive and deconstructive interference basically to create phased interference patterns. 4 transmitters are used in tandem to create constructive interference, and then while the others are used to create deconstructive interference, and together they will create a shape like this. Phase 2 would really allow us to use more transmitters and actually get a better resolution on the triangles and the shapes that we're creating. And then phase 3 uses thousands of transmitters all across the globe. That would create the ability for us to create almost like QR code-like structures where you could create signage and language. The economics alone made it really compelling for me to keep looking at this idea. It's 1,000 times cheaper than any current approaches. So that's the idea, creating a virtual megastructure using this type of radio transmission to create these virtual shapes that when the Earth passes in front of the sun, when it transits in front of the sun, alien civilizations will be able to see structures or messages that are clearly not natural. Anyway, the odds are against me here, right? So writing a speculative article, or how, do I go full academic or just write a theory? And so I would also have to get endorsed, I learned, as I published to arXiv, which might create an obstacle, and could I get endorsed? But I did decide to go do this as a preprint, and haven't written a paper in 15 years, so this is really like a challenge for me to put this together. But I'm a little older now, and I can sound professional when I need to. But Claude was just amazing for this, because as I was writing, I used placeholders for citations. So doing the citation part of this is the harder part, and this is where AI could really do the heavy lifting. And so I put brackets in any of the paragraphs where I knew I would need citations, or that I would need, I would have to reference my works cited. That is where I did ask Claude for help, because when I was done and I had collected all my references, I had basically said, now Claude, what I want you to do is go through my references and then look for anything with brackets and put in the correct reference for where I would reference that particular bit of science. And Claude was amazing with that. Of course, we checked and everything. Okay, so if I thought Claude was good, then Gemini was perfect for doing review. I went to Gemini and I asked Gemini basically to be my research reviewer for this paper. And it was so strict. It's like, no, you can't use a popular science article for this paper. And I did have a popular science article in there. And apparently Claude also threw a Wikipedia article in there for me to reference. And Gemini was like, no way can you do this. You need all primary sources. And this is actually where I started to, feel like maybe Claude wasn't as good as helping me find primary resources, because Gemini was amazing at finding references that could replace the ones that weren't as strong. Gemini was also really good as kind of a backup researcher, helping me find better citations. So Gemini would say, like, you're saying this in your one sentence, but your reference article doesn't really bolster that argument. I actually spent a good 2 or 3 weeks going back, reviewing all my reference articles, finding better ones through Gemini, and then kind of going back to Claude and saying, hey Claude, fix my reference section. And then Gemini was really good for that. And then basically, the idea is this, right? So the big question is, can anyone be a scientist now? What makes someone a scientist? Obviously, credentials, process, contribution, that type of thing. But these tools can absolutely help us add to the scientific community and add to the conversation behind what is being researched. Now, there are people obviously in the scientific community that know the science, that know the math, that know how to do this, but maybe there's other people in the community that are really good at seeing where the puck can go and bridging the gap between idea and the creation of new science. So I'm hoping this is a new era. Now, I know there are some naysayers out there that are like, AGI is not ready, and these tools are all being overhyped, but they are clearly valuable. I even reached out to some people in the AI community that constantly kind of rail against the hype of AI, but there's still value in these tools. The real point is, maybe it isn't whether I'm a scientist or that's not the question, but maybe we are all scientists. With AI, anybody can contribute to human knowledge. What is your crazy idea? What problem have you noticed that experts may have missed? The barrier to entry just got a lot lower, and that's really a good thing. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Please share, subscribe, all those great things. Maybe you have a great idea and you want to start digging in. Ask me some questions, happy to help. But anyway, thanks again. Take care.